Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Fabiana Bacchini, Executive Director of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. CPBF is a charitable organization, and our mission is to support and educate families of premature babies. This Pre-Chat series is one of the many initiatives we have to bring information for NICU families and healthcare professionals. Here every Friday, we talk with experts, researchers, and parents who share with us their experience and knowledge. Also on our website, canadianpremis.org, parents and healthcare professionals will find all kinds of resources. And today we're going to talk about supporting the growth and development of the preterm baby. In this session, we'll discuss what parents can do at home to manage and enhance their baby's development after they leave the NICU. We will talk about what to look for to help them achieve their milestones, what possible issues might occur, and how to prevent them, and when to reach out for help. Tema Stein will help turn challenges into opportunities. And I have here Tema joining me live from Toronto. And Tema has had over 50 years of experience, both as a pediatric physical therapist and department head in Toronto and Vancouver, and now as an osteopathic manual practitioner. She was the founder of Footprints Therapy that began in 1988 and was a co-owner of the practice until recently. Tema has taught extensively across Canada, both as a physiotherapist and osteopathic manual practitioner. She has given courses, workshops, and presentations for students, parents, therapists, doctors, and the general public. As an expert in pediatric issues, she has appeared on TV and radio and has been 2 editions of Today's Parent magazine. She's currently an assistant professor for pediatrics at the Canadian College of Osteopathy. And in her practice, Tema continues to blend her background in pediatric physical therapy with her osteopathic knowledge and skills to provide holistic care for her young clients. Tema, thank you so much for joining us here today. Always a pleasure talking to you, learning from you, and really see your perspective. How do we deal with kids who are born preterm? So thank you.
You are so welcome, and it is such a pleasure to have been asked and an honor to have been asked by you to contribute my experience and just share information. The gift for me was meeting you and Gabriel and Stelios and Thomas. Gabriel was really the angel that brought us together and had an impact in my life, both professionally and personally. I always learn from the families whose children come in because I'm not treating a child, I'm treating a bubble. And the bubble impacts the entire family and caregivers. My goal is really to help children. And my intervention is not based on treating a diagnosis. Anybody can look for problems and deficits. The goal is to treat a child where there are concerns. And my goal from the day I went in as a pediatric physio many years ago was to make life wonderful, to turn challenges into opportunities, and to prevent long-term issues by not watching and waiting, but by being proactive and intervening. Much better to hear there's nothing wrong than to say, oh my God, we missed the ball. So did you want me to continue or did you want to ask me questions?
Well, I think we could start asking you questions because I know we have a lot to teach our families and to share what families can do at home. So my first question is really what parents can do at home right after the discharge to support their baby's development. We all know as parents of preterm babies, they can be delayed with their development. So how can we be proactive from the day the baby goes home?
I think one of the things to recognize that when you leave the NICU, you've been in a cocoon where you're in an adrenaline survival mode. And then all of a sudden you're discharged and it's like you're on an island with no rowboat to get to shore. I think one of the things that parents need to remember, whether your child is premature or not, is that there is no parenting 101 course. I said there is no do this, do that recipes. And the confounding issues that we have with premature babies is that they're not fully developed. And it's not just their musculoskeletal system, it's also their sensory and motor systems, their lungs, their organs, their digestive systems are not well developed. And so we need to help support those, because if babies are feeling good inside, the sky is the limit. Even if there are deficits, they will find a way to move and to interact in their environment. So one of the things you need to remember with premature babies is that they haven't been cooked for 9 months. They came out a little bit raw. And so remember that the last trimester of pregnancy is when the babies develop their tone, where they're in the cocoon and they're curled up like a little ball, and finally they have to get out. Premature babies don't have that cocoon of getting bigger and bigger, and they tend to have lower tone, also confounded by a lot of them needing oxygen to support their growth and development. So the thing that we have to remember is that they go on their own developmental chart. Don't read the books and say, oh my goodness, by 6 months they should be doing this, and 8 months they should be doing that. What you need to do with a premature baby, and any baby, is to look at the way they're climbing the ladder of development. And if there's an area that's not working properly, how do you go make it easier? And what you have to do is you have to help them have success. So what you have to sometimes do is make the environment a little bit easier for them so that they can show you their sensory, motor, and development in an easier way, because they have to all work together. Remember that all babies start developing from the head, then they develop trunk control, and then they start developing the ability to get up onto hands and knees and to walk. So I think one of the things for me right from the get-go is biomechanical alignment. It's really important that babies are positioned in a way that enhances development in a symmetrical way, rather than allowing them to go into dysfunctional patterns, which it's almost like you're building a house. If the foundations is off the center, the house is going to go on an angle. You want to make sure that foundation is balanced in the middle. And you have to do that in the different positions that you put them in to enhance their fine motor, visuals, auditory, sensory, all those systems. So one of the things that I like to do is to use equipment or the support surface to help them. All right. So when the first thing that you want to look at is, number one, how do I make it easy for the baby to develop a milestone? And one of the things that we do, lying on your back for anybody is a lot of work. All right. Because we always think of gravity whenever we do anything. Gravity needs to, number one, assist us and then become a challenge. You do the same thing when you're doing exercises. You have to make sure if your abdominals are weak, you're not going to lie on your back and do a crunch. You're going to put yourself into almost a sitting position and then activate your tummy muscles. Babies who are premature don't have that ability. So what you have to do is make the environment easier for them so that they have success. And one of the things I like to do when they're on their backs, when they're just new, is put them on a nursing pillow. All right, you're not telling them to sleep on it because you have to worry about backs to sleep. But to play, you want to have them in a position where their head is not an extension, okay? And you want to make sure that by putting something behind their shoulders, they're able to get their hands to midline to reach for a toy, all right? With kids who have visual issues, kids who've had issues with retinopathy, etc., you want to make sure that their eyes are leading their function, because the vision directs all the other systems, including fine motor. So what you want to do is put them on their backs, have them in a nursing pillow, and you can even put a pillow underneath their legs so that they get their knees into their visual field, because it's really important for them to see and then to be able to reach out and touch. When you have their arms supported so that they're not pulled back, but they're rather closer to midline, then when you put a toy in front of them, they're able to grasp it. So those are little tricks that I use. As the baby gets stronger, then what you do is you lower the support surface, so eventually they're on their backs. But if you're finding the baby's on their back and the head is hyperextended or turned to one side, you need to reposition it. And if you find that the baby is not accepting that, you need to look at structure. And that's why I personally started doing osteopathy, because I found that with my physio background, I looked at structure, but much more function. So I did function, and then I would continue to do function instead of looking at biomechanical alignment the way I do now. If I find a baby whose head is constantly turned to one side, whether that's because they were in the NICU and their heads were turned to one side, or the babies have a compression between the occiput, which is the back of the head. Here's the skull of a newborn baby right here, okay? So what happens is if there's a problem at the base of the skull where the head cannot not extend or it can't turn both ways, that needs to be corrected, not with adjustments, but with your gentle palpatory skills. All right. So that's the first thing I do. Did you want to ask me any questions after that?
No, I actually, quick question. How early can parents put the baby in that position that the baby's there right now, that you put the
You can do this immediately. Absolutely immediately. Another way of doing that is when you have it, when you've got the baby in your lap and you have the baby on your knees facing you, you can actually have the babies up and you can have them so that they're this way, facing you. And it's the same thing. Instead of being on a nursing pillow, you're using your body to keep them up. And you do this right away. Mm-hmm. All right. This is something that we do when we handle the babies, when we give them a bottle, when we want to nurse them. The babies are in a little bit of flexion. So frankly, I would do that sooner rather than later.
Okay. How about tummy time? Because we also know how important tummy time is from the get-go.
Tummy time is essential. Tummy time is really the beginning of activating the muscles of your neck and activating the postural muscles of your trunk. And a lot of babies, if they complain on tummy time, and again, tummy time doesn't necessarily mean horizontal on a bed, okay? Tummy time can be on your chest. Tummy time can be, and I'll show you here what I often do with the babies in my office, is I roll up a towel and I put the towel under their chest, okay? There we go. And then I have the baby on their tummy. I have my hand on their bum to push down on the bum, and I make sure that the elbows are tucked under the shoulder. Very important. If the babies are on any of the equipment that you buy in the stores where it's very high, they're going to be this way, okay, where they're extended, which is going to make it difficult to swallow. It's also going to make it difficult for them to activate their postural muscles. So elbows need to be under the shoulders, whether it's against you. So if I put the baby against my chest, elbows under the shoulders, and then they can start activating and strengthening the muscles, first of their head and neck, which is normal development, and then they start to get the extension up in their thoracic spine, which is between your shoulder blades. And then as they get older, and in a typical baby, that should be at 6 months. But remember, these babies need to be corrected. Their age must be corrected at least until the age of 2, and sometimes with schoolwork, even longer than that. All right. And then you realize that your baby is actually an Einstein. All right. And you're looking for strengths and not deficits. So tummy time can be on a towel. Tummy time can be on a physio ball where they're on their tummies and the ball is under their chests and you're behind them. And then they can look up at a mirror so that they're getting their heads up, and always have a reason for them to look up. Babies are not going to look up, especially when they've got any kind of visual issues. You really have to move mountains. And so what I do is I try and support that with toys. Bubbles. I actually have to show this to you, and you guys can get it on Amazon, but it's a bubble machine. And especially with COVID, when you couldn't blow bubbles, all you have to do is fill the little whale up with the bubbles, and the bubbles come out. And you just stand it up, and the baby's on his tummy, and you can see the bubbles coming up. So it's a great visual stimulus that gets their attention. All right. So I use toys and equipment a lot.
So,
right?
So talk about the vision. How about mobiles on the crib? Because how early can we use the mobiles?
You can use mobiles right away. I think you have to, again, when you have the baby in the crib, I don't know if you want to use the crib and the sleeping room as a stimulating room. I would be more inclined to use a pack and play where you can hang it above, and then you just lower it and raise it according to how you see them fix and focus. But I'd probably use it more for play, and for sleep, have more music and not too much visual stim.
Oh, okay. That is a great tip.
Now, the other thing, when you have your baby coming from the NICU, at the beginning, you're not really concerned about what their legs are doing. But when they get older, one of the things that happens when kids have low tone is that when they're on their tummies, they keep their legs wide apart, like the letter V. And when you do that and the babies start pushing up, they don't get weight coming through their pelvis. They don't weight bear there. And what ends up happening is that these are the babies who have very, very tight legs, And these are the babies that when they finally do get into sitting, go into W sitting, which is the worst sitting position for every reason in the book. And that's when you sit with your bum between your heels. I'll do it here. There. Let me just lower the table. Okay. Oh, sorry. There we go.
No, actually, you had to raise a little bit.
Okay, that's fine. All right, I'm going to do that. There we go. All right. So this is the bane of my existence, is the babies who can only sit in this W position like a frog. Because what happens is these are the kids who are more prone to hips that dislocate, to knees that are unstable, and for kids who are walking on flat feet, on the insides of their feet. And always visualize your babies as being upright. They're not always going to be on the ground. So you need to prevent and make sure that the next stage of development is tacked onto proper biomechanical alignment, lower down.
Tema, no, so let's talk about milestones, because every parent will focus on the milestones. These milestones should be reached at this age or that age. We know with the preterms are going to be corrected age. How do parents what they should expect, but also how do we measure that?
I think what you have to do is measure the baby's progress according to his own schedule. Not every baby is going to meet milestones at 6 months, at 4 months, 6 months, etc. And if you're constantly looking for what the next kid is doing because he's at a more advanced level, you're always going to be looking for deficits and not opportunities. So, for example, if I know that the babies need the ATNR, that asymmetric tonic neck reflex, which is prevalent routinely between 0 and 3 to 4 months of age. So what happens in a typical baby is when they turn the head one way, the arm on the face side goes into extension and the opposite arm goes into flexion. And then when you turn the head the other way, it switches. You'll see the same thing exhibited in the legs. That should be integrated. And when that's integrated, and with a premature baby, it may take longer. Then you go on to the next milestone of reaching toys together. So it doesn't matter if it's not according to the age description in the literature. Measure today relative to what happened yesterday and go on that level. One of the things that happens when kids are low tone is that it's very hard for them to work from being on tummy to get up onto hands and knees. Sometimes what you have to do is change up the environment. So if the kid is, let's say, 7, 8 months corrected, instead of having him go up onto hands and knees, you might have to put him at the stair on his knees, support his knees, and then put his hands on something. And then you can work him down to the ground. Okay, so in terms of milestones, I would rather a child take longer to reach a milestone and not recruit abnormal patterns of behavior than to do everything according to a book. Okay, just remember these little kids are stars, and they're going to reach their own potential if you believe they can do it. And that's where the glass always has to be half full, not half empty.
Oh my God, Tema, parents love you for that, because you see it that way and you help us to see that. My other question is, I know you have a chair, and let's talk about sitting a little bit. How can we support the babies when they start to sit down, or how do we know when they are ready we use some equipment to support that? One
of the things that when you're with a baby, even before they're ready to sit up, don't not put them into a supported sitting position. Very important for you to have your hands where they need support and encourage them to be in a position where they're more upright. It's going to help their vision. It's going to help head control. So what you want to do is make sure that when you're with them, that they're sitting on their sit bones, okay? You may find when you're with them, you don't want to use equipment if you've got time to be with them, and all you have to do is put the support surface to help you. So here, I've got this baby, okay, and this baby could be 4 months old, and 4 months is when I do correct it. I do put them into sitting, and I demand. I try to encourage them to do more challenging things. So what I would do is put a couple of pillows where so that they can put their arms down, all right? And then I put a toy on the pillow if I'm with them. You want to make sure that their backs are not all rounded. And that's where you'll have to use your hand or you just raise up the pillow or the nursing pillow higher up so that they have more support on their upper back, all right? If you want them to play and you need an extra pair of hands, I wouldn't suggest you use it all the time because it's important for children to feel where they are in space and not have equipment constantly constraining and confining them. But sometimes you need a little bit of help. And the up seat that was developed by some parents in Oakville for their son who has cerebral palsy is probably one of the best little seats. It's very ergonomic. It's not like the bumbo chair where their pelvises are tipped posteriorly. They're actually, the pelvis is slightly tipped anteriorly forward, and they have support for their back. And then it's got a tray, which is essential. All right. And then what you can do is put a toy in front of them. And I highly recommend this toy. I think every time it sells out of Amazon, it's because of me. This one, it's made by VTech. It suctions onto a support surface. It has lights, it has music, and it's easy to use. And so you bring the kids here, and all of a sudden they have some autonomy. They can do something pretty special. If you find the kid is losing his balance, all you do is roll up I use receiving blankets a lot. And what I do is wherever I see them sloshing, I support them with the receiving blanket. All right. Or it could be towels. And this is how I help a child who has difficulty, make it easier for him. As they get stronger, we just remove this stuff. All right. So anytime they're in a position and you're not happy with how they're doing, or they're fussing, because babies will fuss when it's hard work. What you have to do is make it easier for them. All right. And then as they get more comfortable, then you take away some of the little support surfaces. All right.
So my next question to you, when we were discussing this before, you had mentioned for parents to look at their feet. What is about the feet?
What is it about the feet? The feet are the end of the story. Often kids come in with flat feet or they're up on tiptoes. And I know that as a physio in the olden days, I would look straight at the feet and say, oh my goodness, the muscle in the back of their calf is tight. Oh, they're standing on the inside of their feet, and then try to correct that. And then you find that the child either has all red marks from the orthotics because they're putting compressive forces where the plastic is, or they're crying because something doesn't feel right. And anytime you look at the foot position, you have to look biomechanically up at the knees, up at the hips, up at the pelvis, lumbar spine, to make sure that everything is stacked on itself. I even had a child in yesterday who was standing on flat feet and really pitched forward. And it sounds silly. The first thing I noticed was his jaw. His jaw was in the wrong position, which was changing the alignment of his neck. And as a result, all of the alignment all the way down to his feet was not correct. Had I put something on the feet without looking all the way up, I would have caused more problems than solutions. And so it's really important, if you notice something like that, don't just look at the structure that looks funny, look all the way up. And there is an article, it might be on the Footprints Therapy website. I wrote this article many years ago. Oh, there we go. On W sitting, ring sitting, side sitting, the perils, problems, and solutions. And so what I talk about is each of the positions, if the child is stuck in them, what you might see in terms of how they stand. Okay, so it's really important that you look at these things, and it should be on the footprints.ca website.
Yeah, I'm sharing the link right here.
Yeah, this might help a lot, because one of the things that at 6 months corrected, the babies should be on their tummies in tummy time with their legs straight under their pelvis. All right. If the babies are with their legs widely apart, it's going to cause problems later on. And these are the kids who go into W sitting. And it's the worst. The worst. And what they do is when they go on hands and knees and they crawl and they go to sit down, because their legs are wide apart, they go and they sit right between between their knees. And then the feet either are turned out, which then makes them flat-footed when they stand, or the feet are turned in. And when your children start walking, their feet are going to be turned in. They're going to be tripping over their feet. So all those things need to be addressed sooner rather than later. And you don't need a therapist. What you do is adapt the environment. And one of the things that I suggest to the parents is the legs are wide apart. When they're small, when they're on their tummy time, wrap their legs and their bums like a burrito. So what you do is you just put a towel around their hips, okay? And you just roll the towel so that their legs are like a little mermaid. And then you put them in tummy time. A very simple thing to do, because then when they push up onto knees that are close together, all right? If you're creative, excuse me, it fell on the floor. These little shorts are amazing. What they're lycra shorts that are stitched to the crotch. So the legs stay together. They don't go apart, but the kids can sit and cross-leg sit. So I highly recommend these are just little tidbits that you can use to help with your child's development. All right?
My next question to you is, we'll talk about milestones and look at the whole child. But when parents should actually be concerned, what are the red flags that parents should look at if none of those things really change and advance to the next development stage?
One of the things you want to look for is the baby. If the head is always arched backwards, you need to say why. Is there an issue with reflux? Is there an issue that something is stuck in the back? So that's a wet red flag. If you find the baby's head is always turning to one side, you are going to end up, number one, with plagiocephaly. And plagiocephaly just describes a misshapen head, and the head looks oblique. So if the baby's head is turned to one side all the time, that structure is going to flatten. But you'll also find it flattening on the front section as well. So those are important red flags to look at before it becomes a fixed problem. Number three, if you find the baby startling all the time, always in a startle reaction, those are the babies that tend to be much more emotional, much more, you're almost like walking on eggshells when you're around them because they cry a lot. So you need to say, why are they startling all the time? All right. One of the things you want, and I'm going to tell you solutions. If you're finding they're startling all the time, when you hold the baby, don't pick him up by the armpits. Pick him up by the back of the head and the bum. When you want to put him down to lie down, don't just let him drop this way. Put him down so his bum lies down first, and then unroll him almost like a fruit roll up. And then when you bring his head to the support surface, instead of letting it drop back, bring your hand forward and then take your hand off. Same thing when you want to put the baby in the car seat. Don't just plunk him in, because a lot of these babies, especially babies who have a startle reaction or babies with low tone, they will cry because that startle reaction is very prominent. So you do the same thing. You put the baby in the car seat with the bum down, and then you take your hand and you put his head on the support, but take your hand off forward, and that will decrease the startle reaction. So that's another red flag. If he's constantly startling, then you need to speak to the practitioner to find out why. The environment may be too stimulating, or that it could be a red flag for some sensory, some central nervous system. Number two, if you find that when you're changing the diaper, that the legs are tight, it's not easy to open the hips up, you need to say, I need to take the baby to the doctor. And it could be that there's nothing wrong, but it also could be that you need to be proactive in getting the child help. You also want to make sure that they're visually tracking. They're able to fix and follow and track from side to side, because all these are, number one, the precursor for reading. So if the babies are not able to track both ways, think about what happens when they have to read from left to right or from right to left. All right. So those are red flags. I mean, I would rather, if you have any concern, call your doctor, call some people in your area and say, what can I do? Or can you just take a look? So that's where I come from.
So Tema, my last question to you is, because we always say, babies are going to take their time, they are delayed, and then parents sometimes wait and wait. They are waiting for the baby to catch up, per se. So sometimes you delay this intervention, this early intervention is so important for families. So is this the time where they should be looking for those red flags to try to intervene as early as possible to optimize that development?
Absolutely. The longer you wait, the harder it is for you to do damage control and then recoup the health. If you can do less damage control, and then the babies they'll take off. And it doesn't matter if the children have cerebral palsy or they just have low tone. If you intervene early, you can reset the brain. The brain changes itself. And this is my mantra, is that you don't accept a static brain. The book by Dr. Pape, this one, I highly recommend any of your families who are feeling down and out. This is amazing. This Dr. Pape used to be the head neonatologist at Sick Kids many years ago. And she actually left Sick Kids because she felt that she was trying to look for the health and not trying to predetermine a child's future based on an ultrasound and MRI. She said, I need to look at the child and not the test to have him develop his potential. And what happened to her is one of her parents came in and Dr. Pape had treated this child as a baby and said that he was going to have spastic hemiplegia because there was an area of the brain was damaged. And the mom called her up when the child was 4 and the child was running and playing soccer and kicking with the affected leg. And when you saw him run, he didn't look like he had any disability whatsoever. And Dr. Pape had to go and relearn and analyze why this happened. This book is so enlightening. I highly recommend getting it for any of your kids who you're feeling that, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because then you realize the neuroplasticity of the brain and how it can change if it gets the right intervention.
Absolutely. But Tema, I also want to talk to you a little bit because as you follow Gabriel since he was very little, and when I got the diagnosis of cerebral palsy when Gabriel was 20 months old, and I was devastated, right? Because for all that time I was trying to fix and having him catching up with the milestones until we got the diagnosis that felt so permanent to us. And you were the only one who said to me, look, he's the same boy as he was yesterday. He has his label now. And that was very transformative to me, to see his potential rather than his deficits. And as you know, we work really hard with him. He has quadriplegia cerebral palsy, has severe dystonia, but he's so happy and he brings us so much joy. So having a diagnosis, I think from my point of view, obviously is not the end of the world. It's just the beginning of a different journey that you had set your foot for.
You know, it's almost like, I never forget the story when you get on an airplane and you're going to Italy and you know that you're going to have a romantic pizza, pasta, wine, the wineries. And all of a sudden you get on the airplane and they say, we'll be landing in Amsterdam in 10 minutes. You go, Amsterdam? I wanted to go to Italy. And it's almost like your whole journey had to change. And then you get to Amsterdam and you find out all the beauty in Amsterdam. It's a different journey, but it's a journey of progress and potential. And Gabriel may be physically challenged, but you look at how far he's come from the little boy who had, we thought he was totally hearing impaired, not talking. This guy could probably own a radio station or a TV station and be the president and the CEO of the company. So it doesn't matter that his legs and his arms are not working. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't define him as an adult with potential. And I learn this from the kids every moment of my practice, every moment of my life. They energize me, they inspire me, and they tell me that you have to look at the journey according to that particular child and not what it says in some stupid textbook.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you to end with a message for parents, but I feel this is the message for parents. Embrace the journey as it is.
And never say never. You just find another way of doing it. And if you need help, find the people the practitioners who are on the same path as you. If you go somewhere and all they do is tell you what your child won't be able to do, I'll never forget Dr. Pape, I go back to her, who said to me, I find it amazing that my medical colleagues can go into a neonatal follow-up clinic and tell you all the things your child's not going to be able to do, but they have never, ever been able to predict the next Olympic athlete. Remember that. That for me is, it warms my heart every time I think of what she said. It was profound. And that's how I think parents should need to look at their children, as maybe the next Olympic athlete, not a bunch of deficits. Okay.
Tema, thank you so much for joining us here today. Always a pleasure talking to you and sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your perspective into kids with disabilities. Is always so refreshing and wonderful talking to you. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And for all of you watching us here today on YouTube or Facebook, thank you so much for joining us here today. The video of today's session and all the videos from our live series are available on the CPBF website, which is right here, thecanadianpremies.org. And I want to thank our sponsors, AstraZeneca and Water Wipes, for their continuing education support to CPBF. And we are a charitable organization, and we believe that through education and support, we can empower families, ensuring they are ready to care for their premature babies. Visit our website, consider making a donation. Together, we can create a brighter future for all our families. And I see you again next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Stay well, and thank you.